Greymouth was built to survive water. That was the story the city told itself, and for a long time it worked. From above, Greymouth appeared deliberate. Streets sloped gently toward the coast. Storm drains were embedded at regular intervals, iron grates resting flush with the pavement, waiting patiently for rain. Flooding was rare, damage was minimal. The system worked quietly, efficiently, without drawing attention to itself. Below the surface, the city was hollow. This story begins on a night the weather department described as manageable. Heavy rain was expected, accompanied by strong wind, but no warnings were issued. Schools would remain open the next day. Businesses did not close early. Parents did not rush their children inside. On Harbor Street, a quiet residential road 3 blocks from the seawall, a 9-year-old boy named Evan Mercer was sent outside to upright a trash bin that had tipped over in the wind. He wore sneakers with worn soles and a hooded jacket too large for him. He did not wear gloves. His mother watched from the doorway for a few seconds before turning back inside. The distance from the door to the curb was short. 12 steps, Evan did not reach the curb. At exactly 9:17 in the evening, the rain changed. It stopped falling gently and began pressing downward, striking the pavement hard enough to bounce back up. Gutters filled rapidly. Water rushed toward the edges of the street. Storm drains began producing low metallic sounds as water forced its way inside. What happened next was not directly witnessed. It had to be reconstructed. At 9:18, a neighbor across the street heard a sound that did not match the rain. It was described later as a hollow knock, followed by something like air being pulled through metal. At 9:19, a car passed Harbor Street and slowed. The driver would later recall seeing something small and dark near the ground, briefly caught in the headlights, moving in a way that did not look like debris. At 9:20, the storm drain accepted what it was given. Evan Mercer did not scream. According to later forensic reconstruction, water pressure pinned his chest before his mouth filled. His body twisted sideways as it was pulled downward, bending in a way a simple fall could not explain. The grate did not fully detach. It lifted just enough to create an opening shaped less like damage and more like a mouth. When emergency services arrived 40 minutes later, the rain had already begun to ease. Flashlights cut through the darkness. Water rushed toward the curb, carrying leaves, dirt, and fragments of trash. The storm drain sat open just enough to feel wrong, not shattered, not destroyed, open. Search teams worked methodically. Hooks scraped against metal. Gloved hands reached into cold, fast-moving water. As they worked, the system responded obediently. Water levels lowered. The metallic sounds stopped. Evan Mercer was not there. The official reconstruction came quickly. The boy slipped. Water pressure lifted the grate. Aging infrastructure failed. The current pulled him under before anyone could react. A tragic accident caused by weather and neglect. The city accepted this version because it was simple, but storms do not explain angles. Maintenance records showed the Harbor Street drain had been inspected 3 weeks earlier. The bolts were documented as secure. Corrosion was minimal. No issues were flagged. Days later, when the grate was removed and stored in a holding yard, the bolts were still attached. They were bent inward. A fall could loosen a grate. Pressure could lift it. Neither could bend steel inward. Another detail troubled the search teams, though it was never emphasized publicly. Water moves in one direction. Divers entered the underground channels beneath Greymouth, spaces so narrow the ceiling brushed their helmets. They reported debris, branches, and drag marks etched into the silt. A single sneaker was found far downstream, pressed into mud. Evan Mercer was not carried with it. After 6 days, the search was officially called off. The city issued a statement filled with careful language. Tragic, unavoidable, no fault assigned. At school, counselors told Evan's classmates that storms are dangerous and that sometimes bad things happen without reason. Evan Mercer was declared lost to the water. 3 months later, during routine maintenance nearly a mile inland, a worker opened a secondary runoff chamber designed to divert water during extreme tides. The chamber was mostly dry. Only a thin film of moisture coated the floor. Anything carried by a storm should have passed through quickly. Something had not. Behind a concrete lip, pressed into a corner where water should not reach, was a small shape folded inward. Clothing clung to it, dark and heavy with time. The hood of a jacket was still raised, framing a face that should not have been there. The worker did not immediately understand what he was seeing. Authorities arrived within the hour. The chamber was sealed. Photographs were taken, measurements were recorded, voices remained low. The remains were identified as Evan Mercer. The official explanation required improbable turbulence, circular currents, a rare convergence of pressure and timing. The kind of event that could not be recreated. It was accepted because it needed to be, but certain details resisted explanation. Evan's clothing was intact. There was no tearing consistent with violent transport. No stripping caused by rushing water. The hood of his jacket had not been forced back. It rested as it had the night he disappeared. Water does not arrange fabric. There were no impact injuries suggesting the body had been slammed repeatedly against concrete. No evidence of the distance it was supposed to have traveled. The city adjusted its records quietly. The cause of death remained unchanged. The case was closed again, more firmly this time. At the funeral, rain fell lightly. The casket remained closed. A city official spoke about infrastructure improvements and future safety measures. Standing at the back of the service was someone who did not belong to the family and did not wear a city badge. Someone who did not lower their head during the speech. This person watched the faces of those listening, not the coffin. Grief looks different when it is deserved. Afterward, the city moved quickly. The Harbor Street drain was replaced entirely. New bolts were installed, warning signs were added, the sidewalk was repaved smoother than before. The word design was never used. Years passed, new families moved onto Harbor Street, children grew taller. Storms came and went without incident. On the 10th anniversary, a small plaque was installed near the curb, in memory of Evan Mercer lost to the storm. The word lost implied confusion, it implied chance. No mention was made of the bent bolts, no mention of the chain